What's up everyone, Criddle here, and today we're going to be talking about the Archer class in Monsters and Memories. We're going to be going over how I would build the character and stat priority if I were to build one right now today, their role in a group setting, how well it can solo, if it can solo at all, and finally taking a look at the skills and abilities to give you an idea of how this class will play if you decide to play it. The Archer is primarily a range DPS class, meaning it's going to try to do as much damage as possible without pulling aggro from the tank, and it will be doing most of this damage from range. One of the cool features about the Archer is that it has the ability to auto-attack with its ranged weapons, which is exclusive to the Archer and Ranger to my knowledge. As for races, the Archer can be any race except for the Dwarf and Gnome, and I do believe that once they release the Deep Elf and High Elf, those will also be options as well. Next, let's take a look at stat priority, and as you can see here, they have already prioritized strength and stamina, and I would absolutely agree with both of these. So I would definitely pump points into strength, as this is going to be your primary way to do damage, as you are a physical DPS class, so strength would just increase the amount of damage that you do. Next up, we have stamina. As a DPS class, you're usually going to be in the fray of the fight, so if there's an AoE or something of that nature, you might be taking damage, and stamina is just going to increase the amount of health that you have and the ability to take that damage. So I would definitely cap that out as well. And lastly, you have 3 points left over. I would pump all 3 of those into dexterity, as dexterity is going to give you the ability to hit the enemy more often. And if you're not hitting the enemy, obviously you're not doing damage, so you're not doing your job. Some people might take a look at agility here and think, hey, it's an Archer class, they need agility, but agility is mostly going to be used for things like defense, dodge, your parry ability, and block ability, and this class only gets defense and dodge, and the goal is to not be taking direct hits from the enemy, so agility is probably not going to be something that you need a lot of. As for intelligence and wisdom, those are mostly just to get more mana, and this class doesn't use mana at all, so they are not needed. And as for charisma, I would just leave it at 17, as it's the only thing that's going to help you with is going to be your trading, so your commerce, and it's not going to be a big deal if you have an extra 3 points into that or not. Moving on to our traits, let's take a look at the major combat trait. And here I would really only say there are 2 options. There are 2 additional ones, and I'll kind of go over those as well. But I would probably take Brawn here as my personal choice. Is going to increase your strength by 5% all the time. And like we mentioned before, you are a physical DPS class, meaning that strength is just going to increase your damage. In addition to that, you have 15-second buff that you can get 50% more strength, which again is just going to increase your damage even more for those 15 seconds. The next one that I would say is a good runner-up to that would be going Dexterous, and it's going to increase your dexterity by 5%, which would just allow you to hit the enemies more often. So if you're often fighting things that are higher level than you, Dexterous might be the option. Once you get into late game and you're doing things like raids, oftentimes raid mobs are going to be 3, 4, 5 levels higher than you, and that 15 seconds of Dexterous could be very beneficial so that you're able to hit that raid mob for those few seconds or potentially during a burn phase. The other options would be Hardiness if you are fighting mobs that are going to be doing AoE stuns, or if you're going to be taking damage yourself if you're trying to solo a lot, although I do not believe this is a very solo-friendly class. The other option for if you're soloing a lot would be Slippery, so that you don't get rooted very often, but I would just say if you're trying to solo on this class, you don't want to go against spellcasters that are going to be doing root abilities. You're probably going to be wanting to fight melee classes. So I here would go with Brawn, or possibly go with Dexterous if that's what you would prefer. As for your minor combat trait, there's really only 2 options here that I personally would take. As your Cutthroat, your Deadeye, your Swordsman, and your Warrior skills, you're going to be using those a lot, so you're going to not have an issue keeping those maxed out. Really, the only thing the minor combat trait does is it starts you out at 5, and you'll be able to get to 5 and all of these very quickly, but it's going to increase the skill 25% faster. That's going to leave you with Defender and Knife Thrower. If it were me personally, I would take Defender for this, but you could potentially also take Knife Thrower if you're wanting to max that out, but you're probably not going to be throwing knives very often, as you're mostly going to be using your archery skill with a bow and arrow. So I would take Defender so that it does increase 25% faster, so I don't have to sit there and work on trying to increase that. Now the thing is, once you have capped out all of these skills, this trait does absolutely nothing. So at the end, I would say Defender is your main choice here. For our major non-combat trait, there's really only 2 options here with a possible third, and we'll go over that in a second. If you're going to be an artisan, then I would say maybe taking Master Artisan. If you're planning on doing a lot of carpentry, blacksmithing, jewel crafting, leatherworking, pottery, or tailoring, this one is a very good one, especially if you're going to be doing all of those on this character. Me personally, I will most likely be taking Forage if I'm going to be choosing any class right now, as this is just going to give you free food and water as you are playing through the game, so you never have to worry about buying food and water. The other option is if you play a Halfling, going with Sneak could be a really good option here, as the Archer does not get Sneak innately, so playing a Halfling, you will unlock the Sneak ability, and that could be an option as well. And finally, we have our minor non-combat trait. This one doesn't really matter which one you choose, so if you have a preference, go ahead and grab it. But there are a couple that I would recommend and a couple that I would not recommend. So Fletcher would be one for this particular class, as you're going to be using a lot of arrows. So this would just help you start out with a fletching kit, so you don't have to go and find one and buy it in the early part of the game. You would just have one from the very beginning. And ones that I would say you don't want to pick up are things like Lumberjack or Miner or even Swimming, as those are very easy to level, so you don't really need to start out with those. I would recommend getting something that's a little bit more difficult to level up if you're planning to level up that trade skill. Something like Alchemist is difficult because you have to get the alchemy components, and those are not necessarily easy to come by. Or another one would be maybe Jewel Crafter, because you need to get some of the gems, and those again are not super easy to come by. Let us now take a look at the skills and abilities for the Archer. So the Archer will start out with things like your offense, your archery, your slashing skills, those things. So just go out when you're level 1 and just start fighting things, and you will automatically start to level those up. You will have to go to the trainer, however, to learn Dodge. This is a level 1 ability, and it costs 1 copper to get the first point in it. So you will want to go at level 1 to your trainer and grab the Dodge ability. At level 10, you will get the dual wield ability, allowing you to have a weapon in each hand. You will be using this quite a bit because you will be jumping in and out of melee range, melee to range when you are fighting as this class. And then the double attack ability you will get at level 15, which will be very, very beneficial to you because it's just going to effectively double whatever kind of damage you are doing. As for your abilities, you will be starting out with Quick Shot and Throw, although you will most likely never be using the Throw ability, as every one of your other abilities does require a bow and arrow. Once you hit a level 2, you will be getting the Deadeye ability, which is basically a buff that you put on yourself and gives you a chance to cast the spell Rapid Shots, which will give you a 15% haste for 30 seconds. Most likely, once you get this ability, it will probably be up 100% of the time as long as you keep attacking, so you definitely want to have this buff up all the time. And at level 3, you will get the Disengagement ability, which will lower your threat and launch you away from your target, allowing you to gain some distance. Again, this is going to be a very, very good skill because it will help you do as much damage as possible without pulling threat from the tank. Starting at level 4, you'll be getting a Dispelling Shot, which is very beneficial as it does additional damage, but not only that, is it removes one beneficial effect from your target. This will be good for both solo play and for group play, as there will be a lot of enemies that have effects on them like damage shields, which need to be removed as soon as possible. Starting at level 5, you will get Illuminating Shot, which doesn't really do anything as far as damage is concerned, but it does illuminate the target, causing them to light up for 2 minutes, which would be very good for marking a target when you're in a group or raid setting. So this will be very useful for those situations. Starting at level 6, you will get the ability Pinning Shot, which allows you to fire a shot at your target, interrupting their casting, knocking them back, and immobilizing them for 6 seconds. And at level 7, Scatter Shot, which will incapacitate your target for 4 seconds. These two abilities will definitely open up the possibility to solo via kiting, which is the act of leading a mob around an area while damaging it. I do not believe this class will excel in soloing, however, as they are missing both snare abilities as well as movement increasing abilities like Speed of the Wild. And that leads us to their final ability, which is Exposing Shot. Fire an exposing shot at your target, decreasing their defense by 5 and increasing their physical damage received by 5% for 1 minute. Overall, I believe the Archer will be a highly sought after class for groups with its Dispelling Shot, Exposing Shot, and ability to do consistent damage over long periods of time without the need for mana. In addition to that, its ability to lower its threat will allow it to do top DPS numbers without the fear of pulling aggro from the tank. Anyway, that's all for this video. If you found it helpful, please like, subscribe, follow for more content, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!